Merry Christmas, or should I say it in Greek, Tala Christouyena. Welcome to Yuletide in the Byzantine Empire. You'll be very pleased to know that Christmas traditions in the Byzantine Empire were exactly like ours today. The emperor played Santa Claus every year, delivering presents to the good little children of Byzantium on a gilded chariot. Constantinople, brimming with marketplaces, was full of Christmas shoppers. Christmas trees, you bet. Red Starbucks cups, absolutely, except they had Greek writing on them. Why, even the most popular Christmas play, traditionally performed for 24 hours straight on Christmas Eve, was the charming story of Ralpheus, whose greatest wish is to have an official Belisarius Greek fire siphon. But his mom keeps dissing him by saying, "You'll burn your eye out, kid." The Saracens even waged their yearly war on Christmas, besieging Constantinople with giant boulders inscribed with Happy Holidays in Arabic. So now you know all about Byzantine Christmas. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share, and don't forget to... no. The real story of Christmas in Byzantium is a little bit more complex than that. In fact, the reality of the Christmas season in the Eastern Roman Empire of the Middle Ages bears virtually no resemblance to the way Christmas is traditionally celebrated in the mostly secular modern world. In fact, in researching this video, I was shocked to find that Byzantine Christmas looks a lot more like our modern Halloween than Christmas. But if you want to dive in, if you're not too disappointed that there's not going to be red Starbucks cups or a Santa Claus analog or Ralphie and his sodding BB gun, you've come to the right place. This is going to be a very strange journey through the Christmas traditions of Byzantium. Hi, Sean here, bringing you a bit of the holiday spirit, medieval style. Whether your thing is Christmas or Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, the Feast of Sol Invictus, or whatever, it is late December, and I need some views to finish out the year, so here we go. Oh, and as a shameless gimmick to keep you watching till the end, let's play a little holiday drinking game. I've got my mulled wine here. Take a sip of your beverage of choice every time I mention Justinian. That's him in the thumbnail, in case you didn't know. As usual on these Byzantium videos, I do use the term Byzantium, even though the people of this country didn't call themselves that. Byzantium was, of course, the eastern half of the Roman Empire that continued on after the western half of the empire fell in 476 CE. The most important thing to know going in is that Byzantium was an Orthodox Christian empire. But keep in mind that the Orthodox Church of today and its two major denominations, the Greek Orthodox Church and the Russian Orthodox Church, have changed a lot since the Middle Ages. I mention that because even before we get to the more bizarre traditions of Byzantine Christmas, there's an issue we have to get out of the way first, and that's the issue of when Christmas even was in Byzantium. It's a little bit like asking who's buried in Grant's tomb, because the simple answer is, well, it was December 25th, just as it is today. But the whole story is a bit more complicated than that. Some people watching this video may have been surprised a few moments ago when I said that Christmas in the Byzantine Empire was celebrated on December 25th. But wait, am I sure about that? Isn't it true that the Greek Orthodox Church celebrates Christmas on January 7th? Yes, that is true, but the reasons why that is actually have nothing to do with the Byzantine Empire, and in fact the conditions didn't even arise until after its fall. Let me explain. Many of today's Orthodox Christians celebrate Christmas on January 7th, because the Orthodox Church still uses the Julian calendar. That calendar is about 2 weeks and some change behind the Gregorian calendar, which is what we mostly use in the secular world. So, while December 25th has been recognized since ancient times as the anniversary of the birth of Christ, December 25th on the Julian calendar falls on January 7th, or about January 7th, on the Gregorian calendar. This same issue, incidentally, is why the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917, which occurred on November 9th, 1917, was often referred to as the October Revolution, because when it happened, Russia was still using the Julian calendar, and November 9th, 1917, for most of the rest of the world, was October 25th, 1917, in Russia. Plus, the 1990 action film starring Sean Connery and Alec Baldwin just wouldn't sound the same if it was called The Hunt for Red November. Anyway, I digress. However, the Gregorian calendar, named for Pope Gregory XIII, who invented it, actually it was Christopher Clavius, who worked for Gregory, who invented it, wasn't created until 1582, when it was first instituted in Catholic countries by papal decree. Now, if you know anything about Byzantium, you should notice two things about this. First, 1582 was 129 years after the Byzantine Empire fell to the Ottoman Turks in 1453, so the Byzantines weren't around anymore. Second, the Gregorian calendar was instituted by papal decree, and the Byzantines refused to recognize the authority of the Pope, even long before the Schism of 1054, but that just made it official. This certainly explains why the Orthodox Church refuses to recognize the validity of the Gregorian calendar, but it doesn't change the historical fact that Christmas was celebrated on December 25th, regardless of whether that day happened to fall on a different day than the one the Gregorian calendar counted as December 25th. In other words, celebrating Christmas, the actual birth of Christ on January 7th, wasn't even a thing until 1582 at the absolute earliest. Incidentally, the modern nation of Turkey, one of the successor states to Byzantium, didn't adopt the Gregorian calendar until 1917, and Greece, again the modern nation, didn't pick it up until 1923. Confused yet? My point is, Christmas in Byzantium was always on December 25th. The history of how the birth of Christ came to be pegged to December 25th in pre-Christian Roman times is kind of murky, but it's clear that the tradition of observing it on that date was well entrenched in the Eastern Empire, certainly by the time of the Council of Nicaea in 325, one of whose major tasks was to figure out when the hell Easter was supposed to be. They mostly left Christmas alone. As if there was any doubt left about the date, it was the Emperor Justinian who officially fixed December 25th as the date of Christmas, as one of his last acts not long before his death in the year 565. But that was sort of like Franklin Roosevelt codifying that Thanksgiving in the US was officially the fourth Thursday in November. It had already been like that by tradition for a long while before he put pen to paper. If I don't mention this in the video, I'll certainly get comments. Yes, the selection of December 25th, and in fact most winter holiday traditions in early Christendom, did have to do with when pagan traditions occurred, right around the winter solstice. December 25th was the birthday of the old Roman sun god, Sol Invictus, and pagans in the pre-Christian Roman Empire celebrated several other feast traditions, like Saturnalia or Bormalia, around this same time of year, coinciding with the winter solstice, which is usually December 21st or 22nd. So yes, Christian holidays, and Christmastime in particular, did seek to co-opt pre-existing pagan traditions. So if you wanted to get naked and dance around a bonfire to celebrate the solstice, you might not be condemned as a heretic. Oops, that's summer solstice, isn't it? My bad. The next issue in cracking the impenetrable code of Christmas in Byzantium is to understand that it was not just one day. Christmas, meaning specifically the day traditionally commemorating the birth of Christ, was part of a continuum of Orthodox holy days stretching through this part of the year. In fact, Christmas wasn't even the most important of these holidays. It was far outclassed in importance by a holiday called, in the Byzantine Empire, Theophania. This holiday goes by another name today, Epiphany. Now, before we get into this, let me say that I am not an expert on modern Orthodox Christian holidays or traditions. I'm not even Christian in point of fact. So I probably will make a minor mistake here on something or other, but do keep in mind that although the dizzying complexity of feast and holy days in the Orthodox Church does derive from tradition, the traditions in place today and celebrated by modern Greek and Russian Orthodox Christians today have changed in the hundreds of years since Byzantine times. So, just like the January 7th thing, don't automatically assume that because something is a certain way in the modern Orthodox Church, it necessarily was that way in Byzantine times. Theophania, as the Byzantines celebrated it, commemorated the baptism of Christ. It was traditionally celebrated on January 6th. The reason why Theophania was more important than Christmas, or Christouyena as the Byzantines called it, was because it was not until Christ's baptism that he became a holy being, or his divine spirit was revealed, hence Epiphany. Compared to this event, at least for the devoutly religious Byzantines, the mere birth of Christ's human body, oops, I just committed the heresy of Nestorianism there. Anyway, the mere birth of Christ was much less of a big deal than the beginning of his divine nature. In between Christmas, the commemoration of the birth of Christ, and Theophania, the commemoration of his baptism, was January 1st, which was thought to be the anniversary of his circumcision. The Byzantines celebrated everything related to Christ, so why not this too? And yes, they even thought they had it. The purported foreskin of Jesus, a holy relic, was by one account given to Charlemagne by the Byzantine Empress Irene as a pre-wedding present. Yes, they were thinking of getting married at one point, and Charlemagne reportedly gave it to the Pope, who crowned him Holy Roman Emperor on Christmas Day 800. Yes, we're talking about the foreskin of Jesus here. I said I'm not a Christian, so I hope you can forgive me if my reaction is, ew. Anyway, the broader point I'm making here is that the Christmas season was a continuum of holy days, beginning December 25th and continuing through January 6th. You'll notice, if you don't count Theophania itself, there are 12 days there, hence our modern conception of the 12 days of Christmas. A song I am not going to play in this video because it's a vicious earworm that you won't be able to get out of your head for weeks. The Byzantines had a name for it, the 12 days, not the earworm, and it was called the Dodekaimeron, or the 12 days. Notably, the old pagan festivals of Saturnalia and Brumalia were also 12-day festivals. People in Byzantium tended not to work during the 12-day holiday season, except on the eve of Theophania itself, which would be January 5th if you're keeping track. Theophania was a huge holiday. The streets of Constantinople would be cleaned and lined with carpets from the imperial palace to Hagia Sophia, where the emperor, robed in white, would attend a service, then pop back to the palace for a formal banquet. Even the blues and greens, the famous sports hooligans of the Byzantine Empire, the sport for them was chariot racing, not football, were expected to make nice and get along on Theophania, and sing hymns to the emperor when he or occasionally she passed by. I suspect it's not exactly coincidental that the famous Nika riots of 532, which were started by the hooligans, occurred on January 10th, only 4 days after Theophania. Maybe the pent-up aggression that was held in check while they were making nice for the holidays was part of why the anger at Justinian's taxes boiled over at precisely that time. To an extent, I've been holding out on you. I talked about the date issue, and I've tried to put Byzantine Christmas in the context of the 12-day season it was part of, but now can we finally get to the question? What did people in the Byzantine Empire actually do on Christmas? To a certain extent, what actually happened on December 25th was interchangeable with what often happened during all of the 12 days of the holiday season, meaning some Christmas rituals were practiced every day, between and including Christmas, and the eve of Theophania. Christmas was the beginning of the festival, so it was important. In Constantinople, this would be the time when the streets would be cleaned and lined with myrtle branches and sprigs of rosemary. Ordinary people would decorate their door sills, which isn't too dissimilar from what people do today, but the big thing they did was, and I swear I'm not making this up, they went trick-or-treating. It's true. In Byzantium, children and some adults would paint their faces, put on costumes, and go wander around the city, knocking on doors and asking for stuff. The most common costumes were animals, like goats, deer, and camels. The children, in particular, would carry around musical instruments and play them and sing Christmas carols. While not exactly like the brass bands and carolers that you see in every adaptation of A Christmas Carol, it's not that dissimilar from our modern traditions of caroling, with one exception. The kids would play their horns and sing until somebody paid them to shut up and go away. Really, people would give them money or at least treats to go away. Kids would crack jokes and be snarky. Apparently, they wandered around doing this from sunup till sundown during all 12 days of the holiday season, at least in Constantinople and the other major cities. Byzantine children also had another form of trick-or-treating. They would ring the doorbells of rich houses in Constantinople, yes, they had doorbells in the Middle Ages, and they'd bless the occupants with Christmas wishes. Traditionally, the people being visited would give the children apples, oranges, or other fruit. And get this, they'd stick coins into the fruit before handing them over. So just think about this. Today we have a moral panic about crazies sticking needles in Halloween candy, which is an urban myth, by the way, it's never actually happened. But evidently in Byzantium, kids wanted and expected to get treats with metal stuff, especially coins, stuck into them. So maybe if you're tired of your kids being greedy for Christmas gifts, you should adopt the Byzantine tradition and give kids apples and oranges with quarters shoved into them. Actually, you know what? Don't take holiday advice from me. So moving on, here's another tradition that does bear some arguable resemblance to modern Christmas: sporting events. It was traditional that the emperor would decree public games in the Hippodrome at Constantinople. Again, we're talking about chariot racing. Gladiator combats had been phased out by the Byzantine period. So on Christmas in the afternoon, at least in the capital, tens of thousands of people would attend chariot races, where the emperor was also in attendance. This is admittedly different than spending Christmas afternoon watching football on TV while zonked out on mulled wine and tryptophan from holiday turkey, but I suppose there's a commonality there. After the races were over, the emperor would go to Hagia Sophia for a special mass, and then give a major banquet at the palace. The tradition of the Christmas banquet was that the emperor would invite 12 poor people from the city to dine with him and the royal family. The number 12, of course, derived from the Holy Apostles, and also probably referred to the 12 days of the holiday season. So that's Christmas. Did the Byzantines celebrate Boxing Day? Well, though not exactly comparable to the venerable traditions of our British and Canadian cousins, there was a tradition specifically tied to December 26th, the day after Christmas. It was traditional to cook and give as gifts a special dessert called lohozema, which is apparently made from semolina flour, butter, and honey. Apparently it was especially appropriate to give this dessert to women who were pregnant. The reasoning behind this was a commemoration of the labor, meaning childbirth labor, of the Virgin Mary, who presumably on December 26 was resting up from having given birth to the King of Kings. However, the lohozema tradition was controversial in Byzantium for, guess what, religious reasons. The Trullo, or Quinisext Council, a church confab convened in 692 by the Emperor Justinian II, banned this tradition specifically. The official position of the church, at least when Justinian II was in charge, was that the Virgin Mary had never gone through labor, because that would suggest that Christ had at least a partly human nature, and as we know, that idea was heresy. How this was supposed to have worked in practice, I can't tell you. What, she just sat down and the baby sort of popped out? Let's not go there. Anyway, the rulings of the Quinisext Council of 692, including the prohibition of this specific Boxing Day tradition, were generally ignored. The dessert continued to be a Christmastime tradition in Byzantium until the 12th century. War on Christmas, indeed. Oh, one more thing that the Byzantines did at Christmas that we would today recognize: nativity scenes. In public places, people would set up dioramas resembling a cave with a baby lying on a mattress of straw. The development of the cheap plastic version of this tradition would not come until several centuries after the Turkish conquest. So that's Byzantine Christmas for you. I hope you're not disappointed. No Santa, no Christmas trees, no red Starbucks cups, no Ralphie and his BB gun. Instead, we got a lot of religious stuff, a bit of chariot racing, an illegal dessert, and children going around dressed as camels. Thanks so much for watching. I've been on a roll lately with Byzantine history videos. I've got one on the Byzantine-Persian Wars of the early 7th century, and another on Emperor Theophilus's mysterious riches. I also do a lot of nautical history topics, military ships and ocean liners, and some deep dives on historical subjects. Have a great holiday season, and I hope you'll look me up again for another journey into the past.